The Canadian economy, already contending with inflation, tariffs, and a cost of living crisis, is also watching a steady and ongoing slump in the housing market.
The Canadian economy is currently contending with multiple simultaneous pressures, including inflation, ongoing tariff disputes, and a deepening cost of living crisis.
Their action. We need the work on reducing on DCs to broaden to all types of housing types. We need the provincial and federal government to look at removing PST and GST. The Premier has committed that he is going to do that. We applaud.
Families across the country are feeling the squeeze as everyday expenses like groceries, transportation, and utilities remain high. Businesses are also struggling to plan for the future because the broader economic environment feels unstable and uncertain.
Toronto has deferred or eliminated development charges, or DCs, the money that developers pay to help fund infrastructure, on projects dedicated to purpose-built rentals. Ottawa and Queen's Park are removing the HST for first-time home buyers on homes under $1 million.
We are seeing layoffs throughout the sector. A recent study that we did, if we don't return to more historic levels of sales activity and therefore construction activities, we're going to be in a very serious situation.
On top of these existing challenges, the country is also watching a steady and continuing slump in the housing market. What was once one of the strongest and most active parts of Canada's economy has now become a source of growing concern.
Though all housing types are seeing a slowdown, it's the condo market in the GTA that has felt the brunt of the decline. A report from Urbanation this week shows just how sharp the contraction has been.
The impact on workers across the construction and real estate sectors has already begun to materialize, with predictions of significantly worse conditions still to come. Layoffs are already being reported throughout the sector, and industry leaders are warning that without a return to more historic levels of sales activity and construction activity,
banks don't receive a full payment. They will notify the borrower. If it's not fully caught up at the end of 3 months, the banks will turn, by law, the banks will turn the house over to their legal group to move forward with a power of sale or foreclosure action. They're up 90% compared with what they were just a few months ago.
We could lose 100,000 jobs. Our sector in total employs 225,000 people directly and indirectly, so that would be a rather significant reduction.
The situation could become extremely serious. In December 2025, new home sales across the region hit just 240 units. That number is shockingly low for a market the size of the Greater Toronto Area and its surrounding communities. That figure represents a decline of 82% from the 10-year average for the same period, showing just how far activity has fallen compared to what would normally be expected.
To basically beg people to come and just even look at the house, I've been struggling.
Mariam Musavi admits she's barely making ends meet. As a real estate agent in the Greater Toronto Area, her net income has dropped significantly as housing sales.
But without that type of action, without a substantial reset on the taxes that new home buyers have to buy, we're going to be in a very serious situation.
Developers operating across the Greater Toronto Area and surrounding regions are now openly warning that as many as 100,000 jobs are at risk of disappearing. In addition to those potential job losses, there is an estimated $20 billion that could be stripped from Ontario's economy if conditions do not improve. That amount of lost economic activity would affect not only builders and developers,
Thousands
but also
of condos are left unsold. The Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation says about 2,500 new condos are sitting empty in Metro Vancouver. That's double what it was last.
but also suppliers, retailers, trucking companies, and countless small businesses connected to housing. Industry representatives have confirmed that the potential loss of 100,000 jobs is not an exaggerated fear, but a realistic scenario based on current sales levels.
Ontario, especially Toronto, and to the very west in Vancouver or British Columbia, you see a bit of struggle in the markets in their march towards recovery.
Lower interest rates and lower prices should be driving buyers into the market. But economic uncertainty over tariffs means it no longer makes financial sense for builders to start new projects.
The construction and development sector in total employs approximately 225,000 people, directly and indirectly. This includes workers on job sites, office staff, tradespeople, engineers, architects, and many others whose income depends on projects moving forward. Losing 100,000 of those positions would therefore represent a reduction of nearly half the entire sector's workforce. Such a contraction would be extraordinarily significant and deeply damaging, not only for those individuals and their families.
You're in Quebec, or you're in Saskatchewan, or you're in Atlantic, you're in good shape. If you are in Ontario or British Columbia, or maybe even Calgary,
$1 billion from Ontario's economy. This is what happens when federal incompetence meets economic.
New condo sales in 2025 totaled 1,599 units.
But for the broader provincial economy that depends on housing activity as a key driver of growth. Looking more closely at the December 2025 figures, the 240 new home sales recorded across the region were not only down 24% compared to the same period in 2024, but were also down a staggering 82% from the decade-long average.
200 to 300K versus for past year, I think I didn't make more than 50.
According to Urbanation, by 2029, there will be no new condos ready for sale in the GTA.
That means the slowdown is not just a small dip from last year, but a dramatic collapse when compared with normal historical patterns. The situation in the condominium segment is particularly severe. The GTA condo market in the third quarter of 2025 recorded only 316 sales. That figure represents a 35-year low for the market, a level of activity not seen in more than 3 decades.
Condo market is being described as a buyer's market. The problem is there are few buyers to be found. From investors to homeowners, demand is disappearing.
Developers say the only way to turn things around is to lower costs.
Sales in that segment plunged 54% year over year and now sit 92% below the 10-year average, reflecting an almost complete withdrawal of buyer participation. In simple terms, buyers have largely stepped away from purchasing new condominiums. Although all housing types across the region are experiencing some degree of slowdown, it is the condominium market in the GTA that has felt the sharpest and most severe impact of the overall decline.
Her home to the banks is a real possibility for Musavi if she can't sell her homes.
Selection of markets, and they are all in a different place in the recovery cycle.
Costs from material and labor are some of the factors behind this market stall.
A report released by Urban Nation has documented just how dramatic the contraction has been. New condo sales across 2025 totaled just 1,599 units for the entire year. That annual total is down 60% from the number recorded in 2024 and down 91% compared to the established 10-year average. These are not small changes or minor adjustments. These are severe and structural drops that suggest something much deeper is happening in the market. They reflect a near-total collapse in buyer demand within this specific segment, leaving developers with projects that are increasingly difficult to finance or justify moving forward. Toronto currently has 7 months of inventory sitting unsold on the market. This is the first time in 20 years that the city has seen supply levels reach this point, which signals that homes are taking much longer to sell than they have in the past. In a balanced market, inventory levels are typically much lower, and properties change hands more quickly. Now, listings are staying active for extended periods without attracting firm offers. In Vancouver, approximately 2,500 brand new condominium units are sitting completely empty. That number has doubled compared to the same period last year. These are not older buildings that need repairs or renovations. These are newly constructed properties completed and ready for occupancy, yet with 0 occupants. This situation clearly shows the extraordinary degree to which demand has evaporated from the market in a very short period of time. Developers have acknowledged that the only realistic path toward improving conditions involves a meaningful reduction in costs at multiple levels. They argue that high development charges, taxes, material costs, and regulatory burdens have all combined to push final home prices beyond what many buyers are willing or able to pay. Toronto resale condo prices have already fallen 13 to 14% from their peak in 2022. Under normal circumstances, price declines of that size would be expected to attract new buyers looking for value opportunities. Despite those considerable price reductions, buyers are still not returning to the market in meaningful numbers. This suggests that concerns about job security, economic stability, and future price movements are outweighing the appeal of lower prices. A particularly stark example of the current conditions involves a home east of Toronto that sold in September 2024 for $2.3 million. That same property later went through a power of sale for $1.2 million, representing a loss of more than $1 million in roughly 1 year. Situations like this highlight the financial risks that some homeowners are now facing. Power of sale proceedings across the region are now up 90% compared to just a few months ago, indicating that financial distress among property owners is rising quickly. More households are struggling to manage mortgage payments in an environment of economic uncertainty and reduced property values. In response to these deteriorating conditions, Toronto has moved to defer or eliminate development charges on projects dedicated to purpose-built rental housing. Development charges are fees that developers must pay to municipalities to help cover the cost of infrastructure such as roads, sewers, schools, and transit needed to support new communities. Both Ottawa and Queen's Park have also taken steps to remove the HST for first-time home buyers purchasing homes priced under $1 million. The Bank of Canada has cut its benchmark interest rate to 2.25%, bringing borrowing costs to nearly their lowest level since 2023. These measures were designed to encourage buyers to return and to make financing more affordable. Despite these actions, buyers have continued to step back from the market rather than re-entering it in large numbers. Industry stakeholders have therefore called for additional measures beyond what has already been announced. Specifically, they have asked for the reduction of development charges to be expanded to cover all types of housing, not just purpose-built rental projects. They argue that broader relief would lower overall project costs and help bring prices closer to what buyers can afford. There have also been calls directed at both the provincial and federal governments to consider removing PST and GST from new housing purchases on a wider scale. The provincial premier has made a public commitment to move forward on that front, a move that has been welcomed by many in the development community who see tax relief as one of the few remaining tools available to stimulate activity. Without that type of comprehensive action and without a significant reset of the tax burden placed on new home buyers, the sector appears to be heading toward a very serious and potentially prolonged crisis. Tariff uncertainty has added another layer of difficulty for developers trying to calculate whether new projects make financial sense. When there is no clear understanding of what trade policy will look like 6 months from now, it becomes extremely challenging to predict material costs and final sale prices. As a result, many projects are being paused before construction even begins. Workers are being laid off as companies reduce expenses, and the overall development pipeline is steadily shrinking across the region. Lower interest rates and reduced prices would normally be expected to encourage buyers to re-enter the housing market. In previous downturns, cheaper borrowing costs often helped revive demand. However, the ongoing economic uncertainty tied to tariff disputes and broader global instability means that many households are choosing to wait rather than commit to major purchases. At the same time, builders are finding that even with lower rates, the numbers simply do not add up in a way that justifies launching new developments. The scale of potential job losses remains deeply concerning. 100,000 construction-related jobs are currently at risk out of a total sector workforce of 225,000 people employed directly and indirectly. The Building Industry and Land Development Association has stated clearly that if current sales levels do not return to more historically normal patterns, as many as 100,000 workers could lose their livelihoods. The workers at risk include electricians, plumbers, framers, general laborers, project managers, inspectors, and many others who represent a wide cross-section of skilled and semi-skilled trades. Layoffs are not a future concern. They are already happening now. Developers across the region have confirmed that workforce reductions are spreading throughout the industry as projects are canceled or placed on indefinite hold. The regional picture is uneven. Some parts of the country are holding up better than others, and the differences between provinces are becoming more noticeable as the slowdown continues. Markets in Quebec, Saskatchewan, and Atlantic Canada are currently in relatively stable condition, with sales activity and prices not falling as sharply as in other areas. In those regions, demand has cooled but has not collapsed, and builders are still able to move some projects forward. However, Ontario, British Columbia, and to some extent Calgary are experiencing significant and ongoing market difficulties. In these areas, sales have slowed dramatically, inventory has built up, and confidence among buyers and builders has weakened. The contrast between stable regions and struggling ones highlights just how uneven the housing downturn has become across Canada. If sales volumes do not recover, an estimated $20 billion could be removed from Ontario's economy alone. That is not a small adjustment or a minor setback. It represents a massive withdrawal of economic activity that would be felt in communities across the province. The impact would extend well beyond the construction sector itself. Housing construction supports a wide network of related industries. Every appliance that is not installed in a new kitchen means fewer sales for manufacturers and retailers. Every lumber order that is not placed means less business for mills, transportation companies, and suppliers. Every restaurant that loses its lunch crowd from job sites that no longer exist feels the loss in daily revenue. These ripple effects would touch retail stores, manufacturing plants, delivery companies, and service industries throughout Ontario. When housing slows down at this scale, the entire provincial economy feels the strain. There are currently 26,000 condominium units scheduled to arrive in the GTA over the next 18 months. Under normal market conditions, that level of new supply would be absorbed gradually by a steady flow of buyers. However, absorption rates remain extremely weak. Units are not being purchased at the pace developers expected when those projects were first launched. Developers typically need to pre-sell a large share of units before they can secure financing from lenders and begin construction. Pre-sales give banks confidence that there will be enough revenue to repay loans. When those pre-sale targets cannot be met, financing becomes difficult or impossible to obtain. As a result, projects are paused or canceled altogether. When projects stall, workers are laid off, contractors lose income, and companies cut back on hiring. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle of decline where low sales lead to fewer projects, and fewer projects lead to more job losses and weaker economic activity. According to research published by Urban Nation, if current trends continue, by 2029 there will be no new condominiums ready for sale anywhere in the GTA. That projection suggests that the development pipeline is shrinking so rapidly that it could eventually run completely dry. In other words, today's lack of sales is not only affecting current construction, but also threatening the future supply of housing. If builders stop launching projects now, there will be little or no inventory available several years down the road. This kind of sharp slowdown followed by a potential supply gap could create long-term instability in the market. Escalating costs related to both building materials and labor represent additional factors contributing to the current market stall. Even as sales decline, many of the costs associated with construction remain high. Materials such as concrete, steel, and electrical components have become more expensive over the past several years. Skilled labor is also costly, particularly in large urban centers. These higher costs make it harder for developers to reduce prices enough to attract buyers while still making projects financially viable. Ontario, and particularly the Toronto market, along with Vancouver and the broader British Columbia market, are showing the clearest signs of struggle as they attempt to navigate the path toward recovery. It is important to recognize that conditions vary significantly across the country, and different regional markets are at different stages of whatever recovery cycle they may be experiencing. Some may stabilize sooner, while others could face a longer and more painful adjustment. The jobs data paints an equally difficult picture beyond the housing sector specifically. The fourth quarter of 2025 recorded the worst quarter of job cuts since 2008. That makes it worse even than the job losses experienced during the COVID-19 lockdowns, which had previously been considered one of the most severe employment shocks in recent memory. A total of 259,000 job cuts were recorded in that single quarter alone. Over the course of 2025, the government sector cut 308,000 jobs. The technology sector reduced its workforce by 154,000 positions. Part-time employment nationally has fallen by nearly 1 million positions, meaning many workers who relied on flexible or supplemental income have seen those opportunities disappear. The number of Canadians holding multiple jobs at the same time dropped by 505,000. That means 500,000 people lost the second job they had been relying on to keep up with rising living costs. The national average sale price of a home sold in October stood at just over $690,000, representing a decline of 1.1% compared to 1 year earlier. While that percentage may not appear dramatic on its own, it reflects a broader cooling trend in pricing across many markets. In some regions, declines have been more pronounced, especially in the condominium segment. Price softness combined with weak sales volume signals a market that is struggling to regain momentum. There are currently 1.8 million Canadians who have been actively and continuously looking for work for 27 weeks or longer. Long-term unemployment at that level places significant strain on households and social systems. The national unemployment rate sits at 4.1%, matching figures last seen in 2017. However, the direction of change is different. In 2017, unemployment was trending downward, suggesting improvement. Today, the trend is moving upward, indicating that labor market conditions are continuing to weaken. Nearly 1/3 of all Canadian mortgages are set to reset in 2026 at higher payment levels. That means a large number of households will face increased monthly costs at the same time, adding further financial pressure in an already fragile environment. The condominium market continues to be described broadly as a buyer's market. In theory, buyers have more negotiating power because there is ample supply available. The fundamental problem, however, is that there are very few buyers to be found. Demand has been withdrawing from the market among both investors and prospective owner-occupiers alike. Investors are cautious about future price growth, and many first-time buyers are worried about job security and rising expenses. The Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation has confirmed that approximately 2,500 new condominiums are currently sitting empty in Metro Vancouver. That figure has doubled compared to the same period last year, showing how quickly demand has weakened in that market. Regarding the power of sale process, once a bank does not receive a full mortgage payment, it must formally notify the borrower. If the missed payments are not fully caught up within 3 months, the bank is legally required to transfer the file to its legal department to proceed with either a power of sale or foreclosure action. Power of sale proceedings are currently running 90% higher than they were just a few months ago. The property east of Toronto that was purchased in September 2024 for $2.3 million subsequently sold through a power of sale process for $1.2 million, representing a 7-figure decline in property value within approximately 1 year.